to do what you ask your students to do every day, and that's sit back and put on your listening ears and listen and learn something. I get to introduce our speaker. His name is Cliff Dugosh. Is that correct? Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Cliff, and I don't have on my glasses, so if it comes out incorrectly with Cliff, you're going to have to correct them. Cliff is a native of San Antonio. He's spoken to thousands of individuals throughout Texas and several states in the past 20 years, having done over 600 speeches with audiences that range from third grade to corporate executives, so I think he's got us covered. As a Holmes High School senior, Cliff was named the San Antonio Express News, which is now defunct, Top 10 Outstanding Teens. Cliff has a bachelor's degree in health education and a master's degree in adult education from Texas A&M University. Following graduation, Cliff was actively involved in the educational affairs throughout San Antonio, having worked at John Marshall High School. Do we have any graduates from John Marshall High School? For almost 10 years. Cliff was also very involved with high school ministry throughout San Antonio area and with church ministry and with Young Life. From 1999 to 2006, he served as the Assistant Director for Leadership Training and Development for Texas A&M's Memorial Student Center. And for the past 16 years, Cliff has volunteered as a counselor at Dream Street. That's a camp in Southern California for children with life-threatening or terminal illnesses. He was honored by San Antonio's Northside Independent School District as its 2006 Pillar of Caring. We want to welcome Cliff Dugosh. Just please enjoy our speaker.
Thank you. Wow. Over 600 speeches in probably 14 states to numerous school districts throughout the state of Texas. Right now, I'm in the midst of doing 8 speeches in 16 days in 7 cities. This is number 4. So after today, 4 down and 4 to go. And if I needed to be re-energized, boy, did it happen today. And how exciting is that? Know how grateful I am to you for your enthusiasm, for your excitement, and how it has rejuvenated and refreshed me. Welcome back to a new school year. When most people right now throughout the state of Texas are sitting back and they're still watching TV and they're still enjoying vacations, and you've come back a little bit early to get motivated and get excited for what is about to transpire come August the 24th. People think I'm crazy for speaking to teachers. People think I'm insane right now for doing 7 teacher in-services and convocations in 16 days because they know from tradition that teachers are not good audience members. What I have observed, and I think administrators would agree with me, is that your strictest disciplinarians are your worst audience members. So, it goes to show that the teachers who send the most kids to the office are the teachers who are the worst listeners in this audience, and it's quite ironic. And so I've always thought, what if we put a video camera in the corner of the room here and we videotaped you and we focused solely on you, and then we showed you that video and we said, this is how your students are going to act for the rest of the year in the classroom. All of a sudden things would be very different, would they not? I am excited to be here and to share with you today. It's tough to communicate with educators. It's tough to communicate with school systems and with school districts. That's evidenced by this. A school superintendent told the assistant superintendent the following: next Thursday at 10:30 a.m., Halley's Comet will appear over this area. This is an event which occurs once every 75 years. Call the school principals and have them assemble their teachers and classes on their athletic fields and explain this phenomenon to them. If it rains, then cancel the day's observations and have the classes meet in the auditorium to see a film about the comet. Now we go the assistant superintendent to the school principals. By order of the superintendent of schools, next Thursday at 10:30 a.m., Haley's Comet will appear over your athletic field. If it rains, then cancel the day's classes and report to the auditorium with your teachers and students where you will be shown films, a phenomenal event which occurs once every 75 years. Now we have principals to teachers. By order of the phenomenal superintendent of school, next Thursday at 10:30 a.m., Haley's Comet will appear in the auditorium. If it rains over the athletic field, the superintendent will give another order, something which occurs once every 75 years. Now we go teachers to students. Next Thursday at 10:30 a.m., the superintendent of schools will appear in our school auditorium with Haley's Comet, something which occurs once every 75 years. If it rains, the superintendent will cancel the comet and order us all out to our phenomenal athletic field. And now we go students to parents. When it rains next Thursday at 10:30 over the school athletic field, the phenomenal 75-year-old superintendent of schools will cancel all the classes and appear before the whole school in the auditorium accompanied by Bill Haley and the Comets. Communication with educators, quite a tough thing. Communication with teenagers, quite a tough thing. I sat down 2 nights ago for dinner with an all-star quarterback in San Antonio who's already committed to a major university in Texas, and we're talking, and he said, what are you going to do when these 8 speeches in 16 days are over with? And I said, I'm going to relax. And I said, then my goal is to get tickets to a concert that I said I am dying to see in San Antonio on September the 9th. And he said, what concert is it? And I said, James Taylor. And he said, who is that? And I said, who is that? He said, well, does he have a famous song? And I said, probably his most famous song is You Got a Friend. And he said, oh, is that the one from Toy Story? I said, no, it is not the one from Toy Story. And so I realized very quickly at the age of 44 that I've got a generation gap there with some of the students that I serve when I'm not speaking. You see, when I am not speaking, I spend time with high school students in San Antonio, Texas, as a substitute teacher. You heard in the introduction that for 10 years I worked at John Marshall High School. What you didn't hear, even though you heard that I have a bachelor's degree in health education and a master's degree in adult education, is that for 10 years I was a substitute teacher. The people who don't get recognized very often. Let me tell you how that happened. When I went to Texas A&M, I wanted to become a physical therapist, so I entered the program of community health. I made a D in Chemistry 101, I flunked Chemistry 102, I dropped physics after 3 days, and that doesn't look really, really prominent when you apply to physical therapy school. And so those plans were somewhat out the window. But I continued on that degree plan. I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do when I graduated with an undergrad degree, so I did the logical step. I got a master's degree, and I got a master's degree in adult education. I had no idea what I wanted to do with the master's degree, so I did the traditional thing and I moved back home. And so I moved home to San Antonio, and a former high school teacher of mine was now a high school administrator. She's currently a high school principal. And she said, have you ever thought about substitute teaching? And I said, absolutely not. And she said, well, Cliff, why don't you think about it and see if you want to come back into the classroom for a semester to see if or how high school students have changed, and then apply that knowledge to your speaking career. And I said, what do I have to do? And she said, well, you have to go through 6 hours of training. She said, you have to take a test. I said, what kind of test? And she said, a TB test. And I took the TB test, and I didn't have it, and so I went to the next round. And there I was, a substitute teacher now at John Marshall High School, thinking that I would be there for 1 semester. I was there for 10 years. I got a whopping raise, went from $48 a day to $60 a day. I got my own parking space at this high school. That was a premium. I got a different faculty and staff shirt every year. Their colors are maroon and white, and I happen to be particularly fond of those colors. And after about 6 weeks of subbing there, I got my own master key because she got tired of giving me a different key every day. And there I was for 10 years as a substitute. I want you to imagine how many people who knew me, people even who didn't know me, wanted to know why I was just a substitute teacher. And that question came around extremely, extremely often. Why are you just a substitute? And some people wanted to sincerely know that, and some people it was just a very demeaning question. And I got tired of answering that question, and so I finally told people that I had 2 job interviews in the public school sector, and because those 2 job interviews didn't go very well, I relegated myself to the status of being a substitute. Then if they were really aggressive and assertive, they would want to know about those 2 job interviews. So I told them the first one was for a math teaching position. Let me see the hands of the math teachers we have in here. They wanted to know about the first job interview. I told them it was for the math teaching position, and the principal and the head of the math department sat me down, and they wanted to know how I would effectively relate the subject to the young people in the classroom. And I said, you have to put the subject matter into terms that high school students understand. And they said, well, then give us an example. And I said, okay. He's teaching her arithmetic. He said it was his mission. He kissed her once, he kissed her twice, and said, now that's addition. And as he added smack by smack in silent satisfaction, she sweetly gave those kisses back and said, now that's subtraction. Then he kissed her and she kissed him without an explanation. Both together smiled and said, now that's multiplication. Well, then her dad appeared upon the scene and he made a quick decision. He kicked that boy 3 blocks away and said, now son, that's long division. And I told them I didn't get that job. So then they would ask about the second job interview. I told them this time it was for a coaching position. Let me see the hands of the coaches we have in the room. I told them this time it was for a baseball coaching position. The principal, the head of the athletic department, and the head football coach sat me down, and they wanted to know how I would effectively relate that sport to the young men on the team. And I said, well, I explained baseball very carefully. Therefore, they have to listen very carefully. And they said, why is that? And I said, because I explain baseball like this. You've got 9 guys in and 9 guys out to start the game, and the guys who are in are trying to go in and not make out, so when they come in, they don't have to go out, and the guys who are out are trying to get the guys out so they can come in. So in a typical inning, the team that's in, from the first guy it's an out and he makes out, he comes in, the second guy has to go out, he makes out, he comes in, then the third guy has to go out, he makes out, he comes in, the team that's in goes out, and the team that's out comes in, so then the team that's in is out, is trying to the team that's out's an out. Now, for purpose of clarification, if the team was in first to score the same amount of runs, the team was out first, and each has been in and out 9 times, you have to go into extra innings. Again, that means the team is in first, back in, the team is out first, back out, and the game is not going to go much further. The 10th inning starts in a typical fashion. The team that's in, and the first guy it's an out, he makes out, he comes in, the second guy has to go out, he makes out, he comes in, and then the third guy has to go out, he makes out, he comes in, the team that's in goes out, and the team that's out comes in, so then the team that's in is out, is trying to get the team that's out's an out. Now, if the first 2 guys in the team that's in go in and make outs, the third guy in the team knows that if he goes in and makes an out, he has to come in, his team has to go out, and the team has to come in. So the third guy does not want to go in and make an out. So the third guy goes in and he hits the ball all the way out, and he runs around all the bases, and the team that's in goes out and carries him in. And those are the ins and outs of baseball. And I told him I didn't get that job either. So after making those 2 job interviews up, people have never asked me again why I was just a substitute teacher. But I want to tell you about the toughest assignment that I ever received as a substitute. Mike Watts, the principal, called me in and he said, Cliff, we have an emergency. We have a teacher whose mom is very ill. He's flying out this evening to Chicago, and we do not expect him to return. And we need you to take over his classroom. I asked who the teacher was, he informed me, and then I probably asked the dumbest question of my substitute career, and I said, do you realize what he teaches? And he said, yeah, Cliff, I realize what he teaches. I've been the principal here for a long time. He teaches 5 periods of senior English. And he said, I know you have no problem subbing in the English classroom. Where are the English teachers in here? He said, I know you have no problem subbing in the English classroom. And I said, Mike, I don't have a problem with the subject matter. I have a problem with the timing. And he said, Cliff, it's the middle of May. I don't see any problem with the timing. And I said, then Mike, how quickly have you forgotten about a disease called what? Senioritis. And so here he wants me to take over 5 periods of senior English, the last 2 weeks of these kids' high school career. And he convinces me to do that. I want to take you back to that day in your life. I want to take you back to the last day now of your high school career. For some of y'all, that was a lot longer ago than it is for others. But I want to take you back to the last day of English 4, senior year of high school. And you have a substitute who asks you to pull out a piece of paper. He asks you to put your name on the paper, to number it 1 through 4. And then the substitute makes this comment. You won't walk out of here today until you've turned this assignment in. And they were furious. They were livid that a substitute would give a mandatory assignment on the last day of their high school career. Well, as any good English teacher would, or English substitute, I would have to put a prompt up on the board, and the prompt was simply this: I've learned that. And they had to fill in the blank for me 4 times about lessons they had learned about life between the ages of 15 and 18. Here are my favorite. I've learned it's useless to make my bed every morning because I'm just going to get back in it later on. I've learned the policeman never pulls over the other guy when he speeds or breaks the law, only me. I've learned you can never get away with things even when your parents are out of town. I've learned a man is a man all of his life, but a woman is only sexy until she becomes a wife. If you are offended by that, I want you to pay close attention to some of the other responses. I've learned most people have to learn the hard way. I've learned God is always there even when you're not. I've learned you always want the things you cannot have, and once you get them, they're not so great. I've learned never to put myself in a situation where I wonder what could have been. I've learned never to be homesick on the day the research paper is due. I've learned that life is full of disappointments, but everyone must experience bad times in order to experience the good. I've learned the only man a woman can always count on is her dad. I've learned that no matter how dark it gets, there's always a light somewhere. I've learned that when I look my worst, I always see someone I know. I've learned how to cram for a test and pull off an F. I've learned when men are not hungry, tired, or stressed, they are great people to be around. I've learned that maturity is based on the way you handle immature situations. I've learned that by being quiet, you can hear a lot more. I've learned that for the weak man, happiness is defined by how others see you, and for the strong man, happiness is defined by how you see yourself. I've learned that the best teachers you'll ever have are the ones who let you discover your own beliefs. I've learned that crying is not something I can hide or should ever try to. I've learned that faith in yourself and all you can do can make you into whatever you want to be, even if you can't figure out your geometry assignments. I've learned the faster you want the traffic to move, the slower it goes. I've learned that those nights that are the best times of your life might turn out to be the worst times of your life later on. I've learned that God is not too big to come down to my level. I've learned that pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. I've learned the best friend to have is the one who accepts you unconditionally. I've learned that people in high school are so wrapped up in a materialistic lifestyle that they have forgotten the true values that make a stylish person. I've learned that teachers know what we're going through and can be our friends. I've learned that every girl likes a joker, but they don't ever want to go out with him. I've learned that no matter how good of friends you think you are with someone, it's a whole other story when they are on drugs. I've learned that nothing can be gained without a sacrifice. I've learned that strength is born from pain. I've learned that if a guy says he loves you, remember that his actions speak much louder than his words. I've learned I can get away with almost anything with my mom, but nothing with my dad. I've learned that a few minutes of pleasure can bring you a lifetime of pain. I've learned that I spend my parents' money much easier than I spend my own. I've learned never to pee on an electric fence. I've learned no matter how hard you work for a coach, it's never good enough. I've learned that when in a position of leadership, never let your head get bigger than your heart. I've learned not to trade what you want most for what you want that moment. I've learned you should never let anything, not even your girlfriend, come between you and your best friend. I've learned that if she says she's 18 and she looks 18, she's probably 12. I've learned that when you're 10 minutes early coming home, your parents don't care, but when you're 5 minutes late, you're grounded for a week. I've learned every time you meet a really good-looking girl, she has a friend who looks a whole lot better and you wish you had met her first. They asked me to write my own, and I thought that was fair, and I came up with a version of this I had read somewhere. I've learned that the size of your biceps, your tires, your stereo, or your car engine has absolutely nothing to do with your popularity or your success after high school. and my two favorite. I've learned to ask God for only three things: His guidance, the courage to do His will, and forgiveness when I don't. And finally, I've learned you don't know what you've got until it's gone. I've learned you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And all of those but one were written by high school kids at John Marshall High School in response to an assignment given on the last day of their high school career that did not go over well when that assignment was distributed. But as I read those, I read over 700 of those, I realized just how much those young people were learning about life. And I got an opportunity only as a substitute for 10 years to walk by their side. And if you were to ask me why I was just a substitute, I'd probably go back to one semester where I had 4 young men come to me who I guess didn't know where else to turn. I had a young man come to me who'd seen his girlfriend drop to 98 pounds. He was convinced she was anorexic. He approached her parents. Her dad's a medical doctor, and they refused to believe him. The young man was right, and he came to me. I had a young man come to me who had maintained his virginity but had been sexually active, and his girlfriend thought she had genital herpes, and he didn't know what to do. I had a young man come to me who had seen his girlfriend beaten by her father. Her arm had been broken in 2 places. He didn't know what to do. And I had a young man come to me the day after school was out. I was doing some busy work for our counselor's office. And he came back to the workroom in which I was working, and I said, "What are you up to today? What are you up here for?" And he said, "I came to turn in a book." And I said, "Well, you're in the wrong office." I said, "What are you doing back here?" And he said, "I actually came by just to tell you to have a good summer." And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Nothing." And I said, "What's going on in life right now?" He said, "Nothing." And I said, "Okay." And I took out a note card, and I wrote one of my favorite quotes by my favorite author named Og Mandino. And I folded that note card up, and I said, "Keep this in your wallet over the summer. It might come in handy." And little did I know that he would open that note card before he exited the office until I heard him sobbing profusely. Went back and brought him back into the workroom, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I'm scared." I said, "What are you scared about?" I said, "You scared because colleges from all over the South are looking at you as the premier running back?" And he said, "No, sir." And I said, "Then what's wrong?" And he said, "Sir, what I haven't told anybody is that in a month I'm going to become a father." And he said, "You're the first adult that I've told." And he said, "I'm so scared to go and tell my head football coach how badly I've screwed up." And I took him off campus, and we sat at a restaurant for about 2 hours, and we talked about life, and we talked about consequences, we talked about the future, and we talked about responsibility. Little did I know how that lunch would turn into a habit once I moved on to work at Texas A&M. But 4 young men came to me in a period of 1 semester who didn't know where else to turn. I don't think they came to me because I had all the answers, because I did not. But I think they knew me well enough, simply as a substitute, to know that I wouldn't judge them, that I'd listen, and I'd love them unconditionally. But I can take it one step farther. I pulled a student out of class one day, and I simply said, "How you doing?" He played on a club soccer team with a cousin of mine. We talked about that, and then the question comes up that was so simple: "How you doing?" And he said, "Not very well." And that question started a friendship that intensified the next several months to a point where I got to know his family very well. 3 months after that question was asked of this incredible athlete, I placed a phone call to his house. His dad answered, and he said, "Cliff, when I walked in, he was in the process of trying to slit his wrist." He said, "When I walked in, he ran out. And Cliff, I can't chase him." You see, the dad was disabled. He said, "Please help." Jumped in my truck. I'd never driven that fast. I'd never prayed that hard, and I made my way to the driveway. 8th grade brother standing there, and I said, "Where are your parents?" And he said, "Looking for my brother." I said, "Where's your brother?" And he said he went running through those woods, and I was able to spot him thanks to the leather jacket that he had on. Pulled my truck as close as I could and jumped out, and he started screaming adamantly, "Don't chase me." leave me alone. And I had to make my mind up instantaneously as to whether I'd follow my heart or his wishes. I followed my heart. I chased him. I caught him. Been working with high school and college students now for 20 years. It's one of the hardest cries I've ever experienced with a young person. And I held him for a long time. And then I made my way with my hands down to his wrist. And he said, "Don't worry, when you started chasing me, I dropped him." That young man and I are great friends today. He's married, he has a child. He has a great job, but in the last year, he's decided that corporate America is not for him. He wants to go back to college. He wants to get a degree in education. And he wants to be a teacher and a coach because he wants to make an impact. Again, I didn't have all the answers. In that situation, I didn't have all the knowledge. I didn't have all the training. I was able to be there. And I feel like that's what you're called to do. We've got people in here who work in every different facet of the school system. Again, I was just a substitute teacher. But I had the ability to try to impress people or impact people. I had the ability to try to be successful or try to be significant. I feel like in America today, we have far too many people who try to impress and far too few people who try to impact. We have way too many people in America who try to be successful and far too few people who try to be significant. And I feel our challenge in particular as educators is to make an impact and to be significant in the lives of your customers. Customers that I've reacquainted myself with just in the past 2 years. After spending 8 years in College Station, I moved back to San Antonio and I go back and start working with high school students. And let me tell you, my mind is sometimes blown simply by the t-shirts that they will wear on a daily basis. I live to party. That was a 10th grader. Genius by birth, slacker by choice. No longer responsible for my actions. I said, "How old are you?" And he said, 15. I said, "When did you become responsible for your actions?" I said, "Don't you have to become responsible for them before you're no longer responsible?" The first person I sent to the office has a shirt on that says, "You show me your fly," and on the back it says, "I'll show you my breast." She said, "Sir, it's a swimming shirt." I said, "You don't swim here." I said, "I know your coach. I follow your team." She said, "Sir, it's not inappropriate. It's a swimming shirt." I said, "I think it's inappropriate. Let's go break the tie." And thank God I got an administrator who sided with me. The rules don't apply to me. I'm out of bed and dressed. What more do you expect from me? I said, "Wear that to your next job interview and just see how far you get. If at first you don't succeed, lower your expectations. Try writing your college essay on that and see how far you get. If my music is too loud, then you're too old." I agree with that one. You see, I'm the James Taylor fan. If I get caught, it's all your fault. I said, "Try that when you're 30 years old and you rob a house and the cop arrests you and see whose fault it is. Not his." This is where I nod and I act like I'm listening to you. I love hot moms. I said, "Do you have a girlfriend?" And he said, "Yes, sir." And I said, "Wear that to her house and see how far it gets with your dad, with her dad." And my least favorite, an awkward morning beats a boring night. An awkward morning beats a boring night. And that's worn by a high school kid. All of those worn by high school kids that I've worked with in the past 2 years. And let me tell you, the customers that many of you serve have changed. There's nothing you can do about it except for decide if you're going to make an impact and if you're going to be significant. One of the greatest things I've ever received in the mail was a letter that was written by one of my former high school kids to his mom. You see, this young man graduated from San Antonio as an all-city football player and then embarked on a career, an undergraduate career at Texas A&M. And 2 weeks after he left San Antonio for College Station, his mom received this. Dear Mom, Cliff does an activity in one of his classes that pertains to priorities and perspectives. In that class, he has you write down the 4 most important things in your life. Mine were God, family, friends, and fun. But throughout the activity, he takes each object away until you have nothing left at all. It makes you feel lonely and you feel as though you took everything for granted. But he then gives each gift back to you one by one to then let you know just how much each really means to you. Mom, I've thought about you more these past 2 weeks than I have for probably too long. I've even dreamed about you on occasion. I miss you, and it's not until now, away from home, I realize how much you really mean to me. It's like you've always said to me that it will take something major to happen before I wake up. Well, I've woken up someone anyhow. All the years of my life, I've had gifts given to me by God, but it's taken me 18 years to begin to truly appreciate them. I remember too many times that little things would set me off to yelling and screaming at you. I apologize. For all the times I never said a simple thank you, I apologize. I'm writing you this because I feel like I've never really said I love you. And though the past is done and gone and the present is a time of learning, the future is what we make of it, and I know now to learn from my mistakes. And even though in the near future I may never get to live at home like I once did, I know in my heart that because you are who you are, that God will bless you with a home by his side for all eternity and will never have such a precious gift than that of heaven. God bless a mother like you. You're my mom and I love you. Matt. I want you to pretend like she never gets another letter the rest of her life. That the postman continually bypasses her mailbox. I truly believe that that one letter would be enough. My encouragement to you today would be to value and appreciate those things that you have in your life before it's too late. I've always been on the philosophy, not until we get our own lives right can we truly impact the lives of the young people that we work with. So I'd highly encourage you to value and appreciate what you have before it's too late. As it's been said long ago, a student doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I alluded to earlier that lunch with the high school student back in the early 90s would set a precedent for me later on. You see, while I spent time at Texas A&M, I decided to try to go to lunch or dinner with a different student every day. The number now sits at over 1,700 of those lunch or dinner conversations, and you can't imagine some of the conversations that transpire across a meal table. Well, Cliff, I went home this weekend, and my brother and I, who's 15, sat down with my parents last night, and so my parents have been married for 22 years, and they sat us down and informed us that our mom was pregnant. Cliff, I'm 19, my brother's 15, and it was quite a shock, but we got pretty excited until they had to inform us that our father wasn't the father of the child. Cliff, I grew up in Austin, and when I was in high school, my parents split up. I went to live with my father in an apartment. My 12-year-old brother and my mom stayed in the house that we grew up in. He said, I'm a heavy sleeper, and one morning I'm awoken by the sound of the Austin SWAT team busting down the door of my apartment. When they found out that I was okay, they had to inform me that the house in which I had grown up in had been burned to the ground the night before, and that my brother and mother did not survive. They then had to inform me that the arsonist who had been burned over 90% of his body had been caught in the front yard. Cliff, the arsonist, was my father. Cliff, that day I lost my entire family. Cliff, when I was 9, my sister was 7, and my brother was 2. We returned home from elementary school, and our grandparents were at our house, which was quite unusual. And then they had to try to explain in the simplicity and the complexity of 9-year-olds and 7-year-olds' minds that our mother had been murdered. 2 days later, our father was arrested for conspiracy. You see, Cliff, the woman that murdered my mother, was a woman my father was having an affair with. Cliff, that day I lost my family. And stories like that go on and on and on. Because your clientele and because your customers have changed dramatically, all I'm asking you to do is to consider the baggage. Consider the load that some of them carry over their shoulder as they walk into your room on August the 24th. You have an opportunity to impart knowledge, which I would hope every teacher would do. More importantly, you have an opportunity to impact and to be significant. A much higher calling and a much higher challenge. When your father spent all afternoon trying to get you to ride your bicycle, when your mother doctored that bee sting and made you feel better, they made a difference. When your big brother defended you against the playground bully, when your best friend held you as you cried, they made a difference. When your teacher helped you to learn that algebra problem, when that total stranger stopped and helped you to change that flat tire, when your boss showed confidence in you when no one else did, they made a difference. Throughout our lives, there have been people who have taken the time to make a difference, and now you can make a difference. When they wonder if classes will be too hard or if they might get lost on this campus, make a difference. When they wonder about their best friend who moved over the summer or whether or not they'll make any friends at this new school, make a difference. When they ask how to study, where to get a parking pass, or even what to do on a first date, make a difference. When they aren't confident, when they doubt their abilities, and when they are scared, make a difference. When they are worried, feel lonely, or simply don't seem to be enjoying life, make a difference. When they might be just a student and not a person, make a difference. You see, they are our future, and you can make a difference. Come August the 24th, you're going to have students who are going to walk into your classroom who are unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. The good you do today may be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. People favor underdogs, but they only follow top dogs. Fight for some underdogs anyway. What you spent years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. And give the world the best you've got, and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you've got anyway. Regardless of what your role is in the Del Valley Independent School District, understand we all have the ability on a daily basis to choose whether or not we will impress or impact, whether we will be successful or significant. My challenge to you today is to live a life that's worthy of impact and significance. Good luck and God bless.